Hello, this is Diane Dalton, continuing in Chapter 2 for DBA 115 class at Rockingham Community College. We're going to work through some query by example examples out of the textbook. We're going to go through examples 1 through 7 in this video. First thing is example 1. It says to list the number, name, balance, and credit limit of all customers in the database. And all of these examples are using the Premier database. So I'm going to go back and open up my SQL Server Management Studio. And of course we're going to work with the Premier database. So I have to select that first. And I'm going to say let's create a new query. And the way I want to work with this is in the graphical user interface. That's what a query by example is. So I can do a right click and go to the design query and editor. Of course you could use a shortcut. You can also, once you hit a new query and you're editing a query here, you can click on the query menu and use the design query and editor. Alright, so we're looking at the customer table. So I'll click that and add. So we've added that to our query, and I can close this. We're not adding any more tables. And again, the instructions said to list the number, name, balance, and credit limit. All right. So we're going to list the number, the name, the balance, and the credit limit. So those are the fields we're selecting. So all we have to do is put a check by those, and we're going to do it for all the customers in the database, so we're not setting any criteria. So that's all we have to do. Okay, then we're going to execute it, and there's our list. All right, that should match what you had done or what you see in the textbook. Now, the output, of course, looks different because we're working in Microsoft SQL Server Express here, and the textbook examples are all done in Access. All right, let's go to our next example, number 2. We're going to list all fields and all rows in the orders table. Well, that's really just looking at the table, but we're looking at the orders. So let's go do, again, we're in Premier, new query. We want to look at it in the design view. We're looking at the orders table, add. We're not adding any other tables. So what do we want to do? We're going to do everything. Okay, we're going to do all columns. So with one button we can select that choice. It's the asterisk. It has in parentheses, it says all columns, so we're going to output every field. We're not setting any criteria, so that means we'll select every record. It's a very simple query. It's pretty much shows you the whole table. Execute it, and there it is. So that should match what you've seen in the textbook. Let's go to example number 3. Find the name of customer 148. This time we actually have to put in a criteria to find this customer's name. So back to SQL Server, we'll do a new query. We're going to look at it in the editor, and to find a customer number we're going to find it in the customer table. We only need one table, and what are we doing? We're going to look at the customer number. We want to find the customer's name. This time we are actually setting a criteria. So for us, the criteria goes under the filter, and I'm going to just adjust this column a little bit. You can see that. That works just like it does in Excel, so you can see the full names here. So under the filter, we're going to put in the criteria, which is customer number 148. You can press enter. You can see it's building up the SQL language that we're going to learn. We're going to start on that in Chapter 3. Say OK. But also you can see up here in our table, we have this little funnel or filter. That's a little icon that indicates we're filtering on that there's a special criteria set for that one now. Say OK. Here's our query. We have to execute that, and we get the result is Al's Appliance and Sport. Very good. Going on, example 4. This time we're going to use a compound criteria where we're going to look at 2 different fields, and there's going to be a criteria set on both of them. So we want to list the description, the on-hand value, and the warehouse number for all parts that have more than 10 units on hand and that are located in warehouse 3. All right, so now we're looking at another new query. We want to look at it in our query editor view. And we are looking at parts. That's where we're going to find this information. We only need the one table. Let's look at all of it. So we're going to look at the description, how many are on hand, and what warehouse they're in. Okay, so those are the three parts, the three fields we want to list. Now what are the criteria? We want to look at where there's something on hand where we have more than 10, so greater than 10 on the on hand field. Okay, now the second part of our criteria was an and. We also want this condition to be met, so it has to be in the same column of the filter, and we want these all to be at warehouse number 3. Alright, so there's our output. If you need more space here, you can adjust these field ranges to give yourself more space. Alright, so we're going to output those 3. These are the criteria. By putting them in the same column, it means that both of those conditions must be met. That's how you indicate an AND condition. Say OK, and as you can see, our query has the word AND in it. We're going to execute, and those results should match what you've seen in the textbook. Alright, moving on. Next one, example 5. This is a very similar criteria, except that now we're looking at an OR, something that has more than 10 units on hand, or it's located in warehouse 3. Alright, so I'm going to show you how to set up an OR condition in your query. It's a little bit different. Back to my query editor. Now, here's something new. I can take this same query that I had just worked with. So I'm going to take it, I'm going to select it, and I'm going to right click, and I'm going to go to the Design Query and Editor. So I already have most of this in place, right? So that's the same query I had just run. So I'm going back and changing this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take out this criteria for which warehouse. I just highlighted it and deleted it. And instead I'm going to move over to this new field called an OR. And this is where I'm going to put equal 3. Alright, so that now, I can even enlarge this whole table so we can see more of it. Alright, so this is how I create an OR condition. So the first filter is labeled filter. Its on hand is greater than 10, or warehouse is equal 3. Okay? And you can see in my query now, I see the on hand greater than 10, and the word has changed to OR. Execute that, and we get a few more items here in our list. Okay, so that was example number 5. Going on to number 6. This time, we're doing another compound criteria, but both of these criteria refer to the same field. We want the balance to be between 1,000 and 5,000. So let's look at how we do that. And we're going to look at the customers, and we're going to output the number, the name, and the balance. Alright, we'll start a new query. We'll go into our editor. We're going to look at our customer table. And we're going to put out the customer number, the name, and the balance. Those are the 3 fields we want to look at. Now, we're going to set up a filter. And we're going to want the balance to be greater than 1,000. And this time, because the other criteria has to be on the same field, the balance, we're going to put the AND right here, and less than 5,000. Let's enter. Say OK. And now what you see is the where, and you see this AND condition, and it repeats the word balance, balance greater than 1,000 and balance less than 5,000. So we'll execute, and you should see the same results as you see shown in the textbook. And we have one more to go. Going to go to example number 7. This says list the number, name, and available credit for all customers. But if you look at your database tables, we don't have something that says available credit. Well, that's not a stored field, that's a calculated value. Okay, we're going to calculate it based on two values that are stored in the fields, credit limit and balance. right? So available credit is equal to the credit limit minus the balance. And we're going to start a new query, and we're going to put it in the editor, and we're going to use our customer table. Of course, you have to be familiar with your tables to know where all of these fields are stored to know which table you need to use for the query. So we're going to output the customer number and the customer name. Right, well, where's available credit? It's not an automatic field. Remember, we're going to calculate this. So we go down here and we're going to output a new column. So we're going to type in here credit limit, and then we're going to subtract using the hyphen, and we're going to correct or subtract balance. All right, so we're doing a calculation right there in the column output, and we're going to give it a name. That's what the alias field is for. We're going to give it a name as we create it. By default, it would call it expression 1, but we want to call it something else. Available credit. Alright, so as I hit enter, it went down to the lower line. Let me get back up. I'm going to adjust my columns so you can see this. And here's my alias. We're not setting any other criteria, but this is now calculating something as we're doing a query. So it's going to subtract for each one of our customers the balance from the credit limit and label it available credit. So say OK. And you can see what it's doing here. Here's our select. That's a field. That's a field. This is a new calculated field, and it's storing it as available credit. So let's execute and see what our results look like. And there we get a table out, and we get our customer number, our customer name, and a new field called available credit. Now that's not a stored field, remember, that's just something we're calculating on the fly as we run our query. Thank you, and in our next video we're going to start with functions, also in Chapter 2.